CNN has learned that the U.S. military is sending thousands of additional Marines and sailors to the Middle East. This comes just a day after President Trump said this about deploying more troops to the region.
No, I'm not putting troops anywhere. If I were, I certainly wouldn't tell you, but I'm not putting troops.
It also comes just hours after President Trump shared on Truth Social that the fight to stop nuclear-powered Iran is, quote, militarily won. CNN national security reporter Haley Britsky joins us now. Haley, what's the latest? What are you learning?
Yeah, so Boris, we're learning that the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit off the West Coast is heading towards the region now. This is the second MEU going towards the Middle East. The 31st has already left from the Pacific going towards the region. We don't quite know when it'll get there, of course, what exactly it will do. We're still asking if it will stay in the region, if the military will have two of these Marine rapid response forces there. Certainly it raises questions about boots on the ground options, as that's the first thing people think of when they think of these MEUs. But these units are really kind of the Swiss Army knives of the Marines and of the military. They can provide aviation logistics support. So they provide commanders a lot of options. A lot we still don't know about this deployment, but it certainly provides a lot of options to Admiral Bradley Cooper of CENTCOM.
It also raises questions about how long this engagement might go. We heard President Trump say it would be a matter of weeks. Now there are questions about whether this is going to be prolonged.
That's right. I mean, we still don't know how long this is going to go. We hear Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth saying it could be 4 weeks, it could be 5 weeks, it could be 3 weeks. Obviously, we're nearing the fourth week point at this point. But they keep saying, we keep hearing from these senior officials that, as we just heard from the president, this is essentially won, that the conflict is, there's fewer targets to hit. But still, the Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. We just saw yesterday an F-35, U.S. F-35 had to make an emergency landing after sources say it was believed to be hit by Iranian fire. So there's certainly a lot still happening on the ground here, and these units moving in will just provide more options for what the president decides to do next.
Haley Britsky, thanks so much for that reporting.
CNN's Kevin Liptak joins me from the White House. And Kevin, let me go to you first. And more Marines, like we were saying, making their way to the Middle East as administration, of course, pushes, we've been talking about, for extra funding, some $200 billion. Bring us up to date with the very latest. What do we know, first of all, about this deployment?
Right, and this will be the second, what they call a Marine Expeditionary Unit that's now headed towards the Middle East. There is another one that is deploying from Asia and heading in that direction. So it will bring the total number of Marines tasked to these units to about 4,500, and it will add to the about 50,000 American troops that are already in the Middle East. Now, what exactly these Marines will be tasked with, it's not clear. And it comes, of course, as the president does seem to be weighing whether to order a ground operation inside Iran, whether it's to secure Karg Island, that very critical area that the administration thinks would put pressure on the Iranian regime, or to go into Iran to try and retrieve some of the highly enriched nuclear material that is buried far underground. That is certainly something that those Marines could be doing, but it is not necessarily what they're going to be doing. They also have tasks like aviation support, logistics support, all of these other areas that they could potentially be ordered up to do once they arrive. But it all seems to be demonstrating that the president is reinforcing the American troop posture in the region as this war grinds on. We're about to enter the fourth week of this conflict. The president and other administration officials have said that it could last between 4 and 6 weeks. So we are, in about a week's time, nearing the window when, according to the administration's own estimates, it could be winding down. But certainly this decision to send these troops into the region suggests that it may not be ending anytime quickly.
The president said yesterday he's not going to have boots on the ground. He also said, though, that he would not tell the media if he was going to do that. Do you think that we'll end up seeing American military on the ground in Iran, including special operations forces?
Well, first of all, I would never take that option off the table. And so that's always been my recommendation from the Trump administration to the Biden administration. Don't take that option off the table. You never know what's going to happen, and you want to have that flexibility. With regard to that, I've commented before that I think, some type of large-scale operation into the internal part of Iran, going after a nuclear site to secure enrichment material, would be very complicated, very risky, and would be a very difficult mission. Now, something short of that, where you're trying to sees Karg Island as a leverage point against the Iranians, more doable. It would require more Marines than we have now, or a broader set of service members. But I would never take that option off the table. And you mentioned Special Operations Forces. Look, we use them for various means. It could be a type of raid, or it could be to train militia inside the country. So again, I think that is a tool that every president should retain.
Do you think that's what the administration is doing with these more warships and Marines heading to the area? What does that signal to you?
I would certainly tee up options for the president. I think the job of the Secretary of Defense, of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, is to give the president options, and the more the better. The more room he can have to make a decision with regard to which way to go, depending on either a policy choice or in reaction to what the Iranians are doing or threatening. And so again, I would not only keep that card on the table, I would make sure I have the cards available to me in case I want to use them, because otherwise it takes a long time to get these forces in place. You know, the president spoke, or DOD mentioned last week about sending the Marines out of the Pacific, and they're still en route, right? They were recently spotted off of Singapore. So it's going to take another week or so for them to get to the region. So you want to make sure you have those tools in place so that if you need to use them, want to use them, they're available.
Secretary Mark Esper, we appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, Bjorn.
CNN is learning that thousands more U.S. Marines and sailors are heading toward the Middle East just one day after President Trump downplayed deployment reports, saying, quote, "I'm not putting troops anywhere," though he did say that if he were to, he would not share that with the public. The deployment also happening just hours after the president shared on his Truth Social account that the fight to stop a nuclear-powered Iran has been militarily won. CNN senior national security reporter Zach Cohen has our new reporting. And Zach, on that question of the nuclear capability of Iran being militarily won, isn't there enriched uranium believed to be stored hundreds of feet underground, buried under sand?
Yeah, Boris, that is certainly the understanding of the U.S. intelligence community, and it's a problem we know the Trump administration has been grappling with and weighing the possibility of using U.S. special forces potentially to try to essentially go in there and extract or destroy the uranium that is believed to be deep underground at one of those facilities that was hit last year. But again, to the president's comments yesterday about sending additional troops to the region, we're learning that thousands more Marines are going to be deployed to the Middle East here in the near term, having their deployments accelerated. Now, one Marine Expeditionary Unit was already on the way to the Middle East. These are units that are really the Swiss Army knife of military capability. They're made up of about 2,200 sailors and Marines, but we're learning now that they're going to send potentially a second Marine Expeditionary Unit to the Middle East. This unit was intended initially to go and deploy to the Indo-Pacific region, but their timeline has now been moved up, and they're going to be traveling to the Middle East, according to two sources familiar with the plans. And so it does raise questions about what is the Trump administration's timeline for bringing an end to this conflict, and what objectives do they need to accomplish before they can do so.
To that point, you have this announcement of a deployment, and then also what is potentially going to be a $200 billion request for supplemental funding from Congress. How does the administration square that with what Trump has been saying about this coming to a close relatively quickly?
Yeah, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth was asked about that additional request for $200 billion for the Pentagon yesterday, and he said, quote, "It takes money to kill bad guys," and that was sort of his explanation for why the Pentagon is seeking more funding when they've already spent billions of dollars over the last for some weeks of this conflict. We know that the first week of the military operations against Iran cost roughly $11 billion, and estimates for the totality of the war so far are hovering around $20 billion. So some of this $200 billion request, as we understand it, would go towards addressing the expenditures that have been spent so far during the conflict. But there's also speculation and concern that the Pentagon may try to also get funding for other priorities authorities as part of this additional request. That's something that is going to raise a lot of eyebrows on Capitol Hill, as lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are starting to really push the administration to come out and explain their reasoning and their objectives for the Iran conflict. And they haven't even asked Congress to vote on this conflict yet. So a lot of questions as to whether or not this will ultimately come to pass. But the Pentagon is seeking additional funding, and we are seeing more Marines sent to the region.
Zach Cohen, thanks so much for that reporting.